Hey there, welcome to day 3 of our 5-day Hormone Healthy Holidays Challenge. I am so excited to be already 3 days in. We have already talked about sleep and blood sugar, stress and adrenals, and today we are going to be talking about nutrition, all things food related. I've already gotten a couple of questions in. So please feel free to jump in if you have questions, if there's things that you want to hear about specifically. But I think we're going to cover a lot of ground. So let's dive right in. Today, we're also going to be talking about, as I mentioned, there's 10 hormones that control our weight. We're going to be talking about 4 of them today that are directly tied to our nutrition. And this challenge is not about trying to take on every tip that or everything we talk about. It's really just picking 1 or 2 small things that you can begin to implement without feeling overwhelmed. And then we can just layer other things in from there. And that is where you're going to see sustainable changes and sustainable health. So as I mentioned, there are 4 pillars that we have a lot of control over when it comes to our health: food, movement, sleep, and stress. So today we're covering the food aspect, Friday movement, and then tomorrow I'm going to throw in something a little bit different, but just as important. So we're going to be talking about toxins and environmental exposures that can mess with our weight, our hormones, and our blood sugar. So I hope you'll tune in there as well. But when it comes to diet, what questions do you have? Let me just start by saying that there is no one-size-fits-all approach. We all have different microbiomes, life experiences, preferences. Research supports this as well. There is no one single diet that outperforms another beyond 6 months or a year. It really comes down to the one you'll stick with. So humans don't have one food style. We've just always been opportunistic omnivores. So there's no one perfect diet for you. I hate to tell you that, and it can also change throughout your life. So how you ate 5 or 10 years ago might need to change, and it might change again in another 10 years. But today we're focusing on foundational nutrition principles that can apply to pretty much everyone. And also we're going to be talking specifically about what might change once we reach age 35 to 40 and beyond. So speaking of unique microbiomes, I run a lot of gut zoomer stool tests and just looking at people's unique microbiome profiles, gut inflammation, digestive weaknesses, and eating a wide array of anti-inflammatory plant foods is the single best way that you can have healthy, diverse gut bacteria. And that's our gut bacteria is where about 80% of our immune system lives. It determines whether it promotes health or if it causes disease and inflammation and food sensitivities and weight gain, blood sugar dysregulation. So all health really, really does come back to gut health. So that's a huge area of focus that you can start in. Quick exercise for you. I want people to count up how many different plant foods you've had so far today. Just think back, whether you've had breakfast or breakfast and lunch, depending on what time it is there. How many different veggies, herbs, spices, low glycemic fruits, nuts, and seeds. And I'm not talking about entire servings necessarily. It can just be a few bites or a sprinkle here and there. Just kind of think that through. For me, we're kind of out of food, so I had some leftover soup for breakfast, and that got me probably a dozen different veggies, herbs, and spices right off the bat. But just kind of think through, tally up, DM me your number or put it in the chat, and I can send you a tracking form if you're interested, that you can hang up and turn it into a fun game, just to try to branch out a little bit and start to increase those anti-inflammatory compounds. So according to the American Gut Project, we should aim to eat about 30 to 50 each week. Now, try to hit every single color of the rainbow, because every single different vibrantly colored plant pigments contain different combinations of anti-inflammatory phytonutrients. They contain different fibers that feed different healthy gut bacteria that bind different toxins for removal. And so just think about ways that you can start sneaking in a few extra veggies or a handful of fresh herbs to your next soup or stir fry or veggie scramble. Studies also show that people who eat more soluble fiber and more prebiotic fiber have lower belly fat, they have more stable blood sugar, but that's just such a great way to increase your gut bacterial diversity, which is strongly determines how much inflammation you have in your body, your immune resilience. So foods like berries, apples, beans, avocados, nuts and seeds are all really great sources of soluble fiber that will help with all of those things. Another thing I want to point out, protein is so critical. And yesterday we discussed, we start to burn more muscle after age 35, heading into perimenopause and menopause, because as we rely more heavily on our adrenal glands. So I just want to reiterate the need to support those. Go back to day 2 if you haven't heard that talk, where we really do a deep dive on that. But we need healthy supported adrenals, because if we're stressed out or if they don't have the nutrients they need, they will break down our muscle to get those nutrients. And that's the last thing we want when it comes to our metabolism, our blood sugar stability, our body composition, is to lose more muscle mass than we already are going to. So support those with sufficient minerals, with electrolytes, as well as adaptogenic herbs and stress management. But eat more protein. That is number 1 or number 2 tip. They're neck and neck, but this is a biggie, and especially for women. Women don't tend to get enough protein unless we are really intentional about it. Back when I was a vegetarian Ironman, my sister used to joke that I intentionally tried to avoid protein, which totally wasn't true, but I didn't go out of my way to eat protein, and I think the demand on my body definitely took a toll, and it certainly contributed to my digestive and autoimmune issues. But research shows that people who eat about 70 to 75 grams of protein per day minimum, up to, the goal really is about 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. And they have the healthiest body composition. So as a frame of reference, 1 ounce of meat is usually about 7 grams of protein. And then leptin and ghrelin, the hunger hormones that have come up a couple of times, they're the hunger and satiety hormones. They greatly rely on protein and fat intake as well. So getting enough protein, getting prebiotic and soluble fiber, stress management and cortisol reduction all help to balance out leptin and ghrelin. But one thing I see really commonly in patients who struggle with chronic inflammation, with tons of food sensitivities, they just don't get enough protein. And sometimes they're not eating enough protein, and sometimes they're not actually breaking down, digesting, and absorbing the protein they do eat. So they might be great about avoiding gluten, eating a whole foods diet, limiting processed foods. But when we start to actually analyze their intake, we find that they significantly undereat protein. So something you can do is to pull out your phone, and there's different apps. I really like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal for just to kind of look at where you're at with protein intake. Chronometer is awesome too if you're a data junkie. It will help to sort of break down other vitamins, minerals, micronutrients that you're eating, so you can get a sense of where you might be lacking. But protein is just so critical when it comes to our immune function, inflammation, body composition, metabolism. A lot of people ask about protein powders, and I think that they have a time and a place, but they do tend to be highly inflammatory and cause a lot of bloating and digestive issues, especially with those who already have gut issues and hormone imbalances. So food first is always best. So aim for grass-fed beef, pastured pork, chicken, and eggs, wild-caught fish. And then if you do need to rotate in some protein powders, look for one that is a little bit less immune reactive, or rotate them ideally. One that might be already broken down into individual amino acids. Undenatured whey tends to be pretty well tolerated. But whatever you use, if you need to use to supplement, rotate those. Wild caught fish, though, in addition to their protein content, they are really high in DHA, which is a omega-3 fat that is highly anti-inflammatory, critical for gut health and brain health. Our hormones are made out of fat. So let's talk about fat. Hopefully fear of fat is a thing of the 90s, but you do need to play with ratios just to figure out what feels best for you. So things like avocados, olives, olive oil, cold water fish, raw nuts and seeds. So when it comes to cold water fish, the best sources of omega-3s that are high in omega-3s and low in mercury, I like to think of it as it's called smash fish. So wild caught salmon. And if you're feeling adventurous, the little canned fish are actually the highest in omega-3s and lowest in mercuries and heavy metals. So mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, and also if you can find some salmon roe or fish eggs, those are a very, very potent source of DHA. You can certainly also supplement with a high quality fish oil, but just make sure that it's cold water extracted. There's a lot of rancid fish oils on the market. There's just a handful of ones that I know are really high quality. So if you're going to supplement, make sure that it's contributing to the anti-inflammatory effects. Coconut is another one, another healthy fat in moderation. Just depends on some people with high cholesterol, it can drive that up further. So I would just say avoid vegetable oils overall though, because they are very easily damaged. And then it goes to that saying, avoid fried foods, avoid trans fats, unless you want to light a match and set your brain and arteries on fire. So what about intermittent fasting? I had a couple of questions come in about that. So that is something that is a little trickier with women. Someone else asked about doing a longer fast in order to manage and slow and steady weight gain. So overall, a lot of the research has been done on men. So let's just start with that caveat. With women, it's tricky and it can still be beneficial, but this could be its own separate topic. So overall, I would say aim for at least 12 hours overnight of not eating. So if you are stopping eating a few hours before bed to optimize your sleep, and then you get up for breakfast, anything over 12 hours is going to greatly benefit digestion, inflammation, and maybe up to 16 hours if you have healthy adrenals and stable blood sugar. But otherwise, over fasting, over exercising, especially for women over 35 to 40, these types of behaviors can certainly backfire and just stress our bodies out and cause us to release these surges of adrenaline, cortisol, these stress hormones that are going to cause inflammation, that are going to cause our bodies to hold on to weight. So go back and listen to yesterday's topic if you want to do a deeper dive. One of the positive things that intermittent fasting does is it releases glucagon-like peptide 1, so GLP-1. You may have heard about it through Ozempic, which is a popular weight loss drug, but it's made by our gut and it curbs our appetite, it controls blood sugar. The problem with that, using drugs to sort of shortcut it though, is we're starting to see research is indicating that it's causing you to lose muscle. And so the weight on the scale goes down, but you're actually losing more muscle than fat, which is a dangerous proposition if we're looking for longevity, healthy metabolism. So other things, that you can do are like fish, whey, things like cottage cheese, antioxidant-rich veggies, herbs and spices, leafy greens, probiotic foods, that the anti-inflammatory foods come back to support us in this as well. So to recap today, the most important things you can do when it comes to healthy hormones, healthy weight, stable blood sugar through the holidays and beyond are to focus on a diverse, anti-inflammatory, colorful, plant-rich diet, meal timing. Make sure that you are, when you get to a holiday party, for example, focus on protein and fat first, because that's going to help stabilize your blood sugar. And then also go a few hours without eating so you're not snacking constantly throughout the day. And then the meal timing of just giving your body a 12-hour fast overnight while you're sleeping is really important. Getting sufficient protein, just write down this week. Pick one of those apps that I mentioned and just start tracking how much protein you're eating. See if you can get at least 25 to 35 grams per meal and plus a snack. And then dietary fiber and diversity of fiber as well. So, any other questions that you want me to cover today? I know we dug into a lot, but you can always DM me with questions, and hope to see you tomorrow where we're going to be diving into the topic of toxins. I will see you then.